Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Hey, I'm Shauna. I'm the speaker coordinator for the Women's International Beer Summit, and I'm the founder of Seattle Beer School. And I have the great honor of being here today with Lauren Yap of New Zealand Hops. Where you just came fresh out of, no pun intended, fresh out of harvest, correct?
Yeah, definitely did. Yeah, we just jumped straight into processing. So there's pellets coming out on the other side of my office wall.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty sexy, I would have to say. So just a few housekeeping things are up there on the screen right now, but I believe a lot of people are probably pretty much pros at this time. The ask a question button is down there, so you can always ask a question at any time, and we'll get to those at the end. Leave comments, questions in there. We will keep up. I'm going to pop some links in there. Lauren's social for Instagram is up there on the top. Otherwise, if you all haven't submitted for any scholarships or for any of the giveaways, go to queenofbeer.beer for some of those giveaways. So we'll be announcing those soon. Otherwise, I will hand this over to Lauren, and thank you all for joining us.
Hi, guys. So I'm coming to you from Nelson, New Zealand. Hi, Nina. Hi, Lee. Yeah, it's currently 6:45 a.m. I'm in my office right now because I don't have a home office because I'm in New Zealand, and we've pretty much avoided COVID. So it was either sit on my couch and you guys get like a lower view of my face, or I come sit at my desk. So I'm here. That's why it's kind of dark outside, as you can see. So I'm just going to start jumping into it. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about kind of my journey through the craft beer industry, leading to my current position in hops in New Zealand. And then I'm going to walk you through kind of the structure of the company that I work for and the farmers that I get to work with. And I'll highlight some of the points of difference and kind of send over some tidbits about things that I had no idea about New Zealand hop varieties and the New Zealand hop industry. And I wish I could shout from the rooftops to everyone about some really great things that are happening here. And then I'll kind of end with some words about what I'm working on in my personal craft journey and how the New Zealand hop industry is inspiring me here, along with New Zealand and the natural landscape in general. So let's see if I can. So that's kind of what I just said. So my journey largely begins in 2016, where I was at Oregon State, which is where I studied. I studied terrestrial ecology and geographic information sciences. So I largely worked in agricultural breeding programs during my time there. I also studied beekeeping through a master beekeeping program. And my first beer, since it's pretty much a go-to question, was Rogue's Hazelnut Brown Nectar. That was my first craft beer that I said, craft beer is kind of good. Didn't know it all was different than Rainier. So my big jump into the craft beer industry was actually through hops. So it's really come full circle for me. I was thrown into the hop fields of Yakima, Washington, and I worked for a company called Select Botanicals, which is now Yakima Chief Ranches. It was there that I kind of gained an appreciation for craft beer and farmers, really, that make craft beers so exciting. I was absolutely fascinated with the art and the science behind brewing. I had home brewed, it was like really bad with my college roommates, absolutely undrinkable, bottles exploding everywhere, that kind of a thing. But beginning my career there, I think hops have always been at the forefront of my craft beer journey. Hazies hadn't really hit the market yet when I started. So I was drinking these like absolute piney, citrusy, dank IPAs. So the danker the IPA, the better. So yeah, I think I joined at a really awesome time, and it's absolutely come full circle for me being back in the hop industry in another country. So I knew after I worked my first hop harvest that I wanted to start in and try and get a position brewing, but it was hard. No breweries were really bringing people on. At the time, I really wanted to work in Portland, so the job market was like zero. I think at that point it was really competitive. Of course, there are very talented brewers out there looking for jobs. So instead, I jumped into the wine industry, and I worked a vintage at a custom crush winery, which is like the largest, I think it's still the largest wine production winery in Oregon. And so that kind of gave me the crash course that I think I needed to work in a cellar and give me the confidence that I needed, and as well as just getting used to insane hours in a cellar and really the technical parts of the equipment. So, you know, I'd never used any kind of clamp or gasket before then. I didn't know how to use a wrench. And then suddenly I was like whipping them around. And yeah, so after vintage, I then went into Portland and I started applying for jobs, and it wasn't easy. There were some kind of challenging interviews that I faced during my interview process, but I did end up landing with an awesome brewery that kind of took a chance on me, called Base Camp, RIP. I think they've closed down in COVID now. But Base Camp basically gave me the experience that I was completely after. They taught me how to run a brew pub, or a brew house, and I learned how to work on a canning line, and keg beer and write recipes, and really be a part of the craft beer industry of Portland, Oregon, which is so incredible. I didn't know how great it was until I left. The first time that I left Portland, and I feel so lucky that I was surrounded by, I mean, the Pink Boots community there is amazing. But so is just the brewing community, and there's cider and there's wine and there's distilleries, and there's so much inspiration. And so I feel really, really lucky to have started my craft beer journey there. And then basically when I came to the end of my time at Base Camp, I wanted to learn so much more. Again, I'm not like an educated brewer. That was my first brewing experience. And I wanted an international experience, and brewing jobs are kind of hard to find, but with one vintage under my belt, it was fairly simple for me to apply for vintage jobs abroad. So I landed here in New Zealand at Cloudy Bay, which is over in Blenheim. It's about an hour and a half drive from where I'm living now. And that really exposed me to kind of a different style of winemaking, smaller, much smaller than the first vintage that I worked. But I was able to work in a Pinot cellar, and it was pretty experimental because the winery mostly focuses on Sauvignon Blanc. So yeah, that was a really awesome way for me to get abroad and work in fermentation and be exposed to, you know, different people who are experiencing different routes throughout their own fermentation journeys. And vintages, if a brewer hasn't done one, or anyone for that matter, I highly recommend it. It's a crash course on wine. You work long hours, but there are so many cool people in the wine industry. And then, so I met my partner while I was in New Zealand that first time, a Kiwi from the North Island. And he followed me back home, where I started working with Migration Brewing in Portland, Oregon. Some awesome people. The brew team that I worked with there, they've since like moved around to different breweries, but I was so lucky to work with Maddie and Gracie, and casein. And I also jumped on with the main stem malt team. So I was really, really inspired by main stems, like just transparency across the supply chain. It was something that I hadn't really experienced before, and it allowed me to gain an insight into what craft malt is. And I had already been so passionate about hops, and I hadn't really looked to malt as a place where I could have respect for agriculture, and I now do. And I'm really, really grateful for that experience as well. And then about in December 2019, my partner and me decided that we wanted to start making something for ourselves. My partner's a winemaker as well. So we basically picked Nelson, New Zealand on a map because there are hops here. There's malt grown down about a 4-hour drive away from us in the Canterbury region. And there's it's a beautiful wine region that's actually fairly similar to the Willamette Valley. So we came back on January 1st, 2020, and we've been here ever since. It was probably the best random decision that anyone's maybe ever made ever. We've almost entirely lived a normal life here. I was saying this to Shauna earlier, but my partner wore a mask for the first time about a month ago in Auckland. We're so beyond lucky to be in a country that's operating almost as usual, and be able to work and make wine and beer and be in hops. So I've kind of given you the cliff notes about my journey now. Well, I am now based in the Nelson Tasman region, and I work at New Zealand Hops, which is a cooperative of 27 growers. So I didn't know anything about the New Zealand hop industry before I came here, and I brewed with Nelson. I couldn't count how many times. So I think I'll offer some tidbits about what this industry looks like. But for a start, here's a beautiful view of one of our hop farms. It's truly unique being here. It's so green and so lush, and there are mountains behind you and an ocean on the other side. So just to explain a little bit about what this co-op is, we're located here on the 41st parallel, Southern Hemisphere. So if you don't know, I do get asked this question quite a bit when I'm on Zoom calls. New Zealand is a separate country to Australia, full stop. There are so many similarities, I think, between the two countries. But New Zealand is like this tiny, mighty force that is actually about the same population size and land mass as Oregon. So I would say if you take the North and the South Island and you just like put them together, it's about the same size as Oregon. Just to give you an idea of how big it is, it's very small. So here's a slide that shows kind of our journey as a co-op. So it does span a little bit further back than this, with people migrating to New Zealand, mostly from England. But the history of this co-op is largely over 150 years. Among our 27 growers and their families, some of them have had, 6 generations farming on the exact same land. It's a really, really beautiful community of hop farmers. Some of them are, 6th generation with their 7th on their hip and that kind of a thing. There's so much passion. There's so much love for the land and the history and for hops in general. The New Zealand hop farmers have been through so much through the craft beer industry. And as you can see on that bottom timeline, it's the releases of basically some of the world's most amazing hop varieties. some that are like absolutely famed that before coming here I'd never brewed with because I couldn't get my hands on. I'm sure some of you have had the same experience. But you can see that Nelson Sauvin is there in 2000, and that's kind of the start of what New Zealand hops are known as today, dual purpose and aroma hops. And you can see that Riwaka and Mataweka are there in 2007, and then 2016 we have Muteri, and then this last year, 2020, we have Nectaron. So I jumped in there right before Nectaron was released as our new variety. So I've really jumped in at the coolest time that you can be a part of a hop company. So our farmers grow across basically what are 4 regions. So we have the Mataweka region, the Muteri region, Tapawera, and Wakefield. Each of these have their own terroir and specific soil types and very rich histories, and farmers with like these absolutely massive personalities. And some of them have been farming for multi-generation, like I mentioned, as well as there are absolute like young bucks and young couples and families who've come into this from maybe sheep farming or berry farming or apple farming or kiwi fruits, and they've just seen hops as a very viable horticulture business venture for them. And those young new growers have absolutely been absorbed under the arms of kind of our master growers who've been doing this for their whole lives. It's really, really cool to see farmers who are so new calling up farmers who've been at it for, 60, 70 years. And so it's a cool time to be involved. There's a lot of growth in the industry currently, and everyone's looking to grow new varieties and new ways of growing the varieties that they have, and innovation. And there's just so much, it's so movable right now. So this side kind of shows what it looks like in our spread here. So you can see that there's the Mataweka region at the top. Muteri is along that same valley, but further south. And then in the Wakefield Plains, which is another valley with just a different aspect, our head office is over the furthest one in the Wakefield. And that's kind of like right near the ocean, which is awesome. I love to brag about it. And then there's the Tapawera region, which there are some really old farms out there. And then that is primarily where there's a lot of growth in the hop industry right now. A lot of land that's transitioning from like dairy or grazing land into hop fields. You basically drive over this awesome range and then you drop down and it's just hops. It's beautiful. If you didn't know, the Nelson Tasman region here is known as Sunny Nelson. It's kind of the sunniest region in the country. Clear blue skies, really regular rainfall throughout the winter and spring, and there's really lush, rich, young soils that are really, really full of minerals. So that, along with the daytime hours and the winter dormancy, allow this to be the best and most viable place to grow hops in the country. And you're no more than like a 25-minute drive from the ocean wherever you are. So it's like a big chef's kiss. I love it. And I think our farmers love it too. Like, lifestyle is a 10 out of a 10. So back to hops. We grow 18 different varieties across both bittering and aroma hops and dual purpose hops. And many of them are considered more New World in style, while some of the more recent varieties and cultivars fit kind of traditional cultivars of what I guess is called the Old World. Oh, that's a big transition. So you may have heard the news back on Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas, that we had a big hailstorm. So that happened in the Mataweka region, the most northern region of our hop co-op. It was absolutely devastating for some of our growers. You know, it was looking like it was going to be a bumper crop year, and then suddenly there were no hops on these, I mean, massive vines out in the fields. It was the biggest hail event that anyone's ever seen in this region ever. So that was challenging, but I'm so proud of our growers. I think it's night and day what those hops looked like after that hail event and what they looked like at harvest. The amount of effort and just really impressive farming that our farmers had to work at and do to bring back some of these vines. Some of them you would never even know they got hit by the hail. That's how great they were. Overall, though, it was kind of an average harvest condition. We had some rain at harvest, which always puts our growers off picking their hops. So it was an average year, kind of at best, in terms of the weather at harvest. But we did do an awesome green hop program, which is fresh hop. For those of you who aren't here, they call it green hop here. We have 4 advanced hop trials, which I get to work with quite a bit. And then we have our hop oil range. So yeah, you can see on that pie graph kind of what the spread of our crop is. It's changing a little bit as Nectaron has become a really big player with our farmers and brewers across the world, across 20 different countries. I think it's more than that now, but yeah, so this is always shifting as our growers get to know and learn about how varieties grow in their specific soil types and their microclimates. Just, I guess, a quick note that 8,700 hop bales, we touch every single one of those bales, every single one that comes here. So I'm the quality manager, and we basically do a quality analysis on every single bale of hops. I've never worked in a place that was so hands-on. It's been amazing and such a steep learning curve to be able to evaluate and smell and touch and grade these hops, and at the end of the day get to communicate that to brewers. It's so hands-on. If I can stress anything enough, it's that this co-op is so in tune with their quality and want to make sure that the highest quality hops reach brewers. Oh, that's the same slide. Another thing that I was shocked that I didn't know before coming here was that I'd already been a fan, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well, of the New Zealand hop varieties. But New Zealand has this image of being, you know, these lush green lands and like mountains and oceans and lakes, and it goes so much further than that. In the hop industry here, our hop varieties are currently disease-free. So what that means is that our hops aren't susceptible to powdery mildew or downy mildew that you'll see in the Northern Hemisphere quite a bit. There's been intense breeding over the last, really 70 years to make sure that there are no varieties that are susceptible to root rot. And beyond all of that, there is only one pest, the spider mite, that actually impacts our hops. And the impact is so low that our hop growers don't have to spray in most years. Instead, they release predator mites to take care of those mites. So they release mites to eat mites that are bad for the hops. integrative pest management. My mind was blown. That really what that means and the implications of that in the hops that you get mean that the hop breeders here have been able to focus on aroma and flavor so much because we don't really have, I mean, knock on wood, we don't have the disease pressure or the predators that everyone else in the world gets to face. So we are a tiny island down in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and that has its challenges, but this is the biggest plus that I could, I mean, I say it to every brewer that I'm on a Zoom call with or anyone, you know, the fact that we are so beyond lucky that there's minimal sprays put out on the hops here. And you can tell you walk through the hops and it's like walking through a forest sometimes. They're absolutely beautiful and so clean. And yeah, if there was anything I could, you know, tell everyone, it's pretty much that. And it also means that our growers have been able to focus on their specific terroir and the on-farm innovation. So for instance, the clay soils of the Muteri Valley aren't as good because mites like the environment there more, the spider mites. So Nelson Sauvin is probably the variety that's the most susceptible to spider mites. They love it. We don't know why. I'm sure entomologists know why. I personally don't know why. But so that means that some of our growers there have been able to focus on moving varieties out that don't do as well there onto other farms and moving varieties that are less susceptible to spider mites in. It's the biggest blessing that I think our farmers, they really do know, but they've been so humble about the whole time. I mean, the fact that we don't all know this is shocking. And we've been able to focus on innovation and things like organics. We have 2 hop farms, both out in the Tapawera region, New Hoplands and Hinnatai. So both of these farmers are, I mean, I think Dean's 5th generation, and Colin is there with his boys. And I think that's 3 of 4 or 5 generations of farmers. So they both grow organics, and it's because it's not exactly easy to grow organics, but you face so many less challenges than you do in a lot of other countries. So they're really taking advantage of that. So that's those 2 farms, and there's 4 varieties that are under organics currently. Nectaron is being transitioned right now on Colin's farm at New Hoplands, and it's over 12 hectares of organic hops, which is really, really an awesome place to be. Another piece of innovation, I think I'd be absolutely a fool if I didn't introduce these 2 rock stars that I get to work with. So on the right there is Dr. Ron Beatson. So he's Nectaron. Nectaron was named pretty much as an ode to him. He's moving towards retirement now. And Carrie is the new hop breeder who's been working under him for several years and is going to move into that lead breeder role. So Dr. Ron, I mean, Nelson Sauvin is one of his varieties. He's an absolute rock star in this industry, and he's just the nicest person to work with also. His passion and his life goal has been to make hops good for growers and good for brewers. It's so inspiring to be around someone, well, like both of them. The breeding program, it's out at Plant and Food Research. So New Zealand Hops, our co-op, we have a relationship with Plant and Food Research, and we support their breeding program, and they breed some incredible hops. And I get to work with these guys pretty often and be able to, I go out there and we taste through beers that have been dry hopped with the trial hops that are coming out of our innovation program. Imposter syndrome like kicks in right then, because I get to work with some of the greatest, plant breeders in the world. They've bred out rot and continue to make hops that are truly incredible and perfect for this land. I'd also be a fool if I didn't introduce Nectaron. Again, Dr. Ron Nectaron, his big mic drop pre-retirement. So it was commercialized in 2020. When I started here back in the beginning of 2020, this was still called Hort 4337. And I was pretty much brought on to work with this hop and help communicate with the growers exactly what the perfect harvest date was, and really collect as much data as we could during the first commercial year of this hop variety so that we knew how to grow it and we knew what best practices were around this variety, and make sure that it expressed itself really well across the 4 varieties. A note, again, is that Nectaron is over 15 years in innovation and development, but it has been bred to be a brewer's hop and a grower's hop. We have growers showing up every single day of our 27 growers who are saying, I need to plant this, because they see the yields, they see at training, only very few shoots emerge out of the ground. So it's less work. They do less work for more crop. And beyond that, at harvest, you walk into a Nectaron hop field and it's like a wall of aroma. Pineapple, ripe peach is what it comes into the hop shed as here at my office. It's so beautiful. And I know a lot of brewers across the world really like to hear that a hop is good for a grower, because there's some varieties that are just, it takes so much effort and wherewithal to actually be able to grow them well. And a hop like Nectaron is like the people's hop. And some of the other innovation that some of my growers would be like, why didn't you say this if I didn't say it? There's some innovation that's going on farm, including fully compostable, biodegradable string. We're working with a company that makes it here in New Zealand. It composts within a couple of months. It's amazing. And that means that they're able to basically just put it straight back into the land with the vines after harvest, and after they've turned the compost and it's broken down quite a bit. And another really exciting one that's happened over the last few years is that the kilns are fired by wood boilers. So we've done quite a bit of work looking at what greenhouse gas emissions look like. New Zealand's a small country, limited resources. We're so far from everything. So everyone's very aware of greenhouse gas emissions, and just making sure that they're taking care of the land as best as they can. Farmers taking care of the land, it's like, of course. But there have been 3 farms now that have transitioned to wood-fired kilns, and it is night and day the difference between greenhouse gas emissions, between other boilers that you see in hop farms all over the world. It's the highest levels. So I'm really proud of my growers for doing that. And that's, I guess, kind of a big fat ramble about what New Zealand hops is. And I hope that some of my passion and the passion of this co-op has translated over to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, or I'll pop my email on the comments. But I do have a few more notes just kind of about my personal journey. So my journey is like not really ended there, right? I've been so lucky to be able to work with so many incredible women in this industry. And I think there's so many challenges that women have faced. And I'm so inspired by the talks that I've heard over the last 24 hours from all of you. And the different ways you've navigated this industry and the larger industry. It hasn't been easy. I know so many stories of people who faced adversity, and I feel really lucky. I'm an Asian American woman, but I'm fully white passing. So even though I don't fit the stereotype of what a brewer has looked like for so many people, I have been able to fly under the radar as a woman who is white. And I think that's lent me a lot of free passes throughout my time. I think one thing I've seen so much of is that we're asked as women to present ourselves with so much grace and poise, and expected to be so humbled by the experience, which a lot of times isn't reciprocated in others in the industry. I've been in so many situations where the equipment doesn't fit, or things are too heavy, or people just don't offer a lending hand. And I'm so humbled by the help of women in this industry, and all of you who are here now and able to be present, and I get to see you and be inspired by you. And I just feel so lucky in a digital age to be able to do this. And, you know, even here in New Zealand, you find a place with women in beer. It's so beautiful, and I feel so humbled to be a part of it. So yeah, cheers. I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was that I'm also, of course, a brewer and a winemaker, and I my partner and me built out our brewery during lockdown, and we have our first wine that was made during our first lockdown at the beginning of 2020. They're out now, and I get to be inspired by farmers and their passion towards their crop, and I get to turn around and put those hops in my beer for my own business, which I feel very, very lucky to do. Yeah, so I'm sure you'll hear more about me in the future. I'll answer some questions now.
That was awesome, Lauren. I for one learned so much about New Zealand hops that I never knew before.
I know there's some cool stuff happening down here.
It's pretty wild that disease-free. Like, I'm just like, wait, what? That's incredible.
I know. I came here and I was like, what? What do you mean?
Why is this place paradise?
How does no one know about this?
Well, now we do because of you.
Yeah, exactly.
So we do have some questions here. Oh. Okay, so do you do tours, events with different farmers for visitors?
Yeah, on a normal year we do. The borders are currently closed, but and in the past, I think the co-op, we haven't had the capacity to offer massive tours, but there is like a beer festival that happens every March in the middle of harvest. So you get brewers and just like people, craft beer fans from all over the country coming. And a lot of our farmers give tours themselves, but yeah, we do take brewers and people out to our farms. And I mean, the closest one is like a 5-minute drive from here, so it's pretty sweet.
Awesome. It's so cool that you have such a deep connection to all your farmers.
Yeah, it's been such a long journey getting to know all of them. And basically at the beginning of this harvest, I spent so much time with every single farmer, making sure that they were ready. And I was, again, imposter syndrome. I was like, wow, I get to know all of you guys. It's been a really, really cool journey.
That's awesome. Yeah. Someone asks, is there a big fresh hop season in New Zealand like there is at Washington breweries?
It's growing. So this year is the first year that, I mean, we did 4 metric tons of fresh hops. I mean, I like sat on a forklift and like shoveled fresh hops all day. It didn't used to be a thing. When I first, in 2019, when I came, I was like, maybe 1 fresh hop beer was in can. And now you walk into the grocery stores and there's like, they've dedicated a wall to it. It's like, oh, cool, it's happening.
It's so cool because you're from Portland, so you get it. Like, you know that. And I'm in Seattle, so when fresh hop season happens, it's like you can't not get a brewery to make a fresh hop.
Yeah,
it's awesome. All right. So you mentioned imposter syndrome setting in sometimes. How do
Yeah.
you deal with that feeling when it pops up?
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty lucky to be around people that, I mean, less than a year ago, didn't know me at all. And the fact I'm the only brewer by trade in this company. Everyone comes from really cool backgrounds, but I often just like take a walk. If I'm at work, I take a walk around the office and like have chats. And it's a really great reminder to see people who are so passionate about beer, but also have questions for me. That really like takes down any imposter syndrome I have. And a lot of our growers know me now as the brewer and the winemaker. So I pretty much just need to do a big whiz around the area and I can kill that really easily. I'm around a lot of people who are very good at their jobs, and being around that energy allows me to remember that I am good at my job.
That's a good thing to hear, because I often feel the same way, where you're just like, you get in ruts and you're just like, and then it's like you talk to people and you're like, wow, people are cool, and like they, and like I don't have to feel this way.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're in you work for a very supportive company with a lot of badass people, which is cool.
Yeah.
Which is so reassuring. Okay, we have a couple more here. What's the craft beer scene like in New Zealand compared to North America?
I think it's a couple of years behind North America. It does have its own individual like craft beer flavor, but like everyone started loving hazies this summer. It's like a couple of years back. I know. So it's behind what I'm used to, which is a cool place to be, because I get to be like, well, hazies, the hazy train, like eventually you're not going to want to drink like just chunky orange juice. Eventually you're going to like a low ABV lager. I know it.
It's the trajectory of a beer drinker, right?
Exactly. And like stouts are coming. There's a really funny, it's a very English country. So a lot of people are like, they think that stouts are for like very old men, and very old men go, I drink stouts when I turn old. And now like you see craft stouts in the supermarket, you're like, oh, it's happening. It's happening.
Yes, please.
I know.
I love that kind of like, I always forget that it's like very English, right? In New Zealand. And that connection must be there, right? With like British brews and stuff as well.
Yeah. And it's a really young country. So I think everyone's still finding their feet in craft beer. It's a fruit basket though. So like people are starting to do some really cool fruit beers, and like, I don't know, I think everyone's finding their feet. I'm really excited for where the craft beer industry is going here.
That's so cool. All right, here we go. Do you have any tips or insight to growing hops for home brewing?
Oh, I don't know. I might here in New Zealand. I guess there are like quite a bit of Facebook groups that have like professional hop growers on them. I think there's one that I'm a part of called like Hop Growers of the World or something. That's been really helpful, because you get to see different trellising systems, when people are training, people put up like a ton of information, or even for diseases, when you aren't in New Zealand, they'll put up like photos and say, what is this? And then the whole world gets to answer. I personally probably can't offer very much guidance, but that's where I've been to grow my hops at home,
Cool. Facebook is good for some things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we have another one. Have you come across much cask conditioned ale? I hear there's quite a bit there.
Yes, I would say so. In this area specifically, there's probably like 5 spots that are known for their craft beer lists, and every single one of them have at least 2 cask beers on tap. There's not many breweries brewing any like cask ales though, to be honest. They're pretty much like the same beers. They're really good beers though. It's like a stout and an ESB, so can't complain. I know.
Yes, please.
Exactly.
It's so cool because it's kind of similar to here, right? You'll have like, we have Machine House here in Seattle, where they do cask, but really there's not a lot. It's a hard sell in America, especially to educate people about cask ale.
Yeah, you kind of hear, people here go, oh, it's warm. It's like, oh, come on, guys, just try it.
Can I just get another hazy, please?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fun. I have a question for you, if you don't mind. I'd love to learn more about your fermentation project, about your wine and beer. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so we just finished our second vintage. So wine and hop harvest are very conveniently located at the same time of year. So basically I work hop harvest and then I moonlight at our winery, which our friends own. And this year we about doubled in size. So we did about 4 tons of grapes. So we farm our own vineyard. We did buy some fruit this year. But yeah, we're on a trajectory to make more wine. And this is entirely organically farmed because, again, we're in a really great place for organic agriculture. And it's all natural fermented. So it's all wild fermented, unfined, unfiltered, that kind of a thing. And then we also make beer. So the beer project has just started up pretty much. We released one beer, Vienna Lager, about 2 months ago, and everything else has been sitting in barrels. So we kind of like launched and said, hey, we're the new brewery in town. And then we said, oh, but we're not going to have beers for 6 months because they're all in barrels. Sorry. Which I think people are like confused about, but it's been really cool. We're going to do our first bottling run of a saison that has Chardonnay lees and fresh hops in it, probably in 2 weeks. So yeah, we're treating our beer the same way that we treat our wine, and really are looking at long-term ferments and long-term projects. Because we're doing both, we get to give the time to everything and make sure that it has its forms and it really comes together as a singular product. So yeah, some exciting things coming.
Oh, it's so cool. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get on the next flight to New Zealand. And,
yeah, exactly.
so I can try all your goodies. Yeah. Well, we're at time, but I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Lauren. This was an incredible session. I learned so much. I know everyone else did too. And as soon as this is over, the recorded session will be available, so you can, if anyone missed it, jump on. Otherwise, thank you so much, Lauren, and hope to see you in the Pacific Northwest sometime soon.
Yeah, I'll be there soon, y'all. Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of the summit. Bye.
Yeah, bye.